Good day. For decades, one of history's most enduring conspiracy theories has captivated the imagination of researchers, historians, and the general public. Did Adolf Hitler, the Nazi dictator responsible for the Holocaust and one of history's greatest evils, really die in his Berlin bunker on April 30th, 1945? Or did he somehow escape to Argentina, where he lived out his remaining years in hiding, protected by a fascist government that admired his ideology? This question has spawned numerous books, documentaries, and investigations. The FBI has declassified documents discussing the theory. CIA agents have speculated about it. And in 2025, Argentina's government announced it would declassify nearly 2,000 documents relating to Nazi fugitives who settled in the country after World War II. But what is the truth? What do we actually know about Hitler's death? And what do we know about the very real Nazi presence in Argentina that has fueled these theories? Over the next 30 minutes, we will examine the historical evidence, separate fact from fiction, and explore one of history's most fascinating and troubling mysteries. The story begins at the end of World War II in Europe. By April 1945, Nazi Germany was collapsing. The Soviet Red Army had surrounded Berlin. The Americans and British were advancing from the west. It was clear that defeat was inevitable and that the Nazi regime was doomed. As Soviet forces closed in, Hitler remained in his underground bunker, the Führer bunker, where he had established his final headquarters. The bunker was a complex of rooms deep underground, protected from the constant bombardment of the surrounding city. Here, cut off from the outside world, Hitler spent his final days. On April 30th, 1945, according to the official historical record, Adolf Hitler died. The most widely accepted account is that he shot himself. His wife, Eva Braun, whom he had married shortly before his death, died at the same time, though she reportedly did not shoot herself but rather took cyanide. Their bodies were then removed from the bunker, doused with gasoline, and burned by Hitler's staff. This account comes from eyewitness testimony given by those who were present in the bunker during Hitler's final hours. These included his adjutant Otto Günsche, his valet Heinz Linge, and others who had been with him throughout his time in power. Their accounts, given both immediately after the war and in subsequent interviews, consistently describe Hitler's suicide in the bunker. Furthermore, the Soviet Red Army, which captured Berlin shortly after Hitler's death, discovered the remains of what they believed to be Hitler and Eva Braun. The remains were examined, and a Red Army report confirmed that Hitler was dead based on the discovery of these remains. However, there is a crucial complication to this narrative. After Stalin captured Berlin and discovered what he believed to be Hitler's remains, Stalin kept this discovery secret. He suppressed the Red Army report confirming Hitler's death. Why would Stalin do this? One explanation offered by historians is that Stalin wanted to maintain an air of mystery and superiority over the other Allied nations. By not confirming Hitler's death, Stalin kept the Western powers guessing and uncertain. This Soviet secrecy created a vacuum. For years, as the Cold War developed, the Soviet Union maintained official silence about Hitler's death. This silence allowed rumors and speculation to flourish. Various stories circulated about where Hitler might have gone. Some claimed he had escaped to Argentina on a submarine. Others claimed he had hidden in a secret compound in the Patagonian wilderness. The FBI was among the agencies that took these rumors seriously. Declassified FBI documents from the 1950s revealed that American intelligence officials investigated claims that Hitler had fled to Argentina. One document from 1945 and 1946 references reports of a potential hideout for Hitler at a spa in Lada, Argentina. The document notes that the hotel's owner and family were ardent supporters of Hitler and had contributed financially to the Nazi Party. According to the document, the hotel had made arrangements for Hitler to take refuge there if he required a safe haven. Another declassified CIA document from October 1955 mentions an agent who received intelligence from a source claiming to be a former SS soldier who asserted that Hitler was still alive in Colombia. The document treats this claim as something worthy of investigation, though no evidence was provided to support it. But here is the crucial point. Declassified intelligence documents investigating a claim do not constitute proof that the claim is true. Intelligence agencies investigate all manner of rumors and tips, the vast majority of which prove false. The fact that the FBI and CIA investigated claims about Hitler in Argentina merely shows that these agencies were doing their jobs, following up on leads, no matter how unlikely. Now, it is absolutely true that Argentina was a haven for Nazi fugitives after World War II. This is not a conspiracy theory or speculation. This is historical fact, confirmed by extensive research and documentation. Thousands of Nazis did flee to Argentina. The most notorious were Adolf Eichmann, one of the chief architects of the Holocaust, and Josef Mengele, the infamous doctor who conducted hideous experiments on prisoners at Auschwitz. Adolf Eichmann arrived in Argentina in 1950, traveling under a false identity as a Red Cross refugee. He used the alias Ricardo Clement and claimed to be a stateless technician born in Italy. He lived in a modest house in San Fernando, a city north of Buenos Aires, where he worked at a Mercedes-Benz plant. For over a decade, Eichmann lived quietly in Argentina, evading the authorities. It was not until 1960 that Israeli secret agents finally located Eichmann and captured him. He was smuggled out of Argentina and brought to Israel, where he was tried for his role in the Holocaust, convicted, and executed in 1962. Josef Mengele's story in Argentina was similar. He arrived in 1949 under the false name Helmut Gregor. He also integrated himself into Argentine society, running a business importing medical supplies. Like Eichmann, Mengele lived for years without being captured. The Argentine government appears to have made little effort to locate him or extradite him. It was not until much later, when the net began to tighten and Mengele felt under threat, that he fled Argentina. He first moved to Paraguay and then to Brazil, where he eventually drowned in 1979 while swimming. But Eichmann and Mengele were not alone. Extensive research and declassified documents reveal that thousands of Nazis fled to Argentina. Conservative estimates suggest that as many as 5,000 Nazi war criminals and collaborators settled in the country. Some estimate the number could have been as high as 10,000. These Nazis were not all low-level functionaries or minor collaborators. Many were high-ranking SS officers, military personnel, scientists, and government officials. How was this possible? How could thousands of Nazis find refuge in Argentina? The answer involves several factors. First, Argentina's government, particularly under President Juan Domingo Peron, who ruled from 1946 to 1955, was sympathetic to Nazi ideology. Peron himself had fascist leanings and admired aspects of the Nazi regime. He had even served as a military attaché in Italy in 1939, where he had studied fascism and met with Benito Mussolini. Peron's government actively facilitated the arrival of Nazi fugitives. The director of Argentina's immigration office, Santiago Peralta, and Peron's private secretary, Rodolfo Freude, were both sympathetic to the Nazis and helped facilitate their entry into the country. According to declassified documents and historical research, there was an organized system with people close to the government who made it relatively easy for Nazi war criminals to arrive and establish themselves in Argentina. Second, Nazis used what became known as the Ratlines, clandestine escape routes that helped them flee Europe after the war. The Ratlines were elaborate networks that typically ran through Italy or Spain and across the Atlantic to South America. Some Ratlines had connections to Vatican officials who allegedly helped Nazi fugitives escape. Others involved cooperation with various governments and intelligence agencies. One of the primary ratlines ran from Germany through Rome and Genoa in Italy, then across the Atlantic to Argentina. Nazis fleeing Europe would travel through Italy, often with false papers, and then board ships headed for South America. Many of these escapees traveled with documents issued by the International Red Cross, which had been used to facilitate their movement. Once in Argentina, the Nazis often settled in German communities, particularly in the regions around Bariloche in the south. Bariloche, in the Patagonian region near the Chilean border, became something of a haven for Nazi fugitives. The area had established German communities dating back decades, and new arrivals could blend in relatively easily. The Argentine government benefited from the arrival of these Nazi scientists and engineers. Argentina was attempting to modernize and develop advanced technology, including jet aircraft and nuclear programs. Nazi expertise in these fields was valuable. Some historians argue that Argentina's technological advancement in the post-war period was directly attributable to the Nazi scientists and engineers who had fled there. This historical reality, the actual presence of thousands of Nazi fugitives in Argentina, has fueled speculation that Adolf Hitler himself might have fled to Argentina. If Eichmann and Mengele could hide in Argentina for years without being caught, could not Hitler have done the same? However, there is a fundamental problem with this theory. While it is certainly true that other Nazis escaped to Argentina, the evidence that Hitler specifically did so is extraordinarily thin. Let us examine what we actually know about Hitler's death. The official account, supported by multiple pieces of evidence, is that Hitler died in the bunker on April 30th, 1945. This account is based on eyewitness testimony from those who were with him, his adjutant, his valet, his doctors, and others. These witnesses consistently reported that Hitler shot himself and that Eva Braun died at the same time. Moreover, in 2025, scientists conducted DNA analysis of a blood sample allegedly from Hitler's blood on fabric from the sofa in the bunker. The analysis was conducted by researchers from the University of Bath, led by geneticist Turi King, who is renowned for her work in identifying the remains of King Richard III. The DNA was compared with known DNA from Hitler's maternal relatives, and the results matched. The DNA analysis conclusively confirms that Hitler died in the bunker and did not escape. The forensic evidence also supports the account. Witnesses describe finding Hitler slumped on the sofa with a firearm, and blood splattered on the couch and the wall behind him. This is consistent with a suicide by gunshot. The autopsy report of the remains indicates a close-range gunshot wound, consistent with self-inflicted injury. Furthermore, Hitler's medical condition in April 1945 makes a long escape and years of hiding highly improbable. By the end of his life, Hitler was suffering from multiple ailments. He had severe tremors in his left hand. He was plagued by stomach problems and chronic pain. He depended on various medications. An escape across Europe and across the Atlantic, followed by years of hiding in remote Argentina, would have been physically extremely difficult for someone in his condition. But what about the FBI and CIA documents that mention Hitler in Argentina? These documents are often cited by proponents of the escape theory as proof that Hitler did escape. However, this is a misinterpretation of what the documents actually show. When you examine these declassified documents closely, they do not present any credible evidence that Hitler was in Argentina. Rather, they document rumors and unsubstantiated claims that were investigated by intelligence agencies. For example, one document references an informant who claimed to have information about Hitler's location, but no corroborating evidence is provided. The informant's identity is often unclear, and the reliability of the information is not established. Intelligence agencies routinely investigate such claims, no matter how improbable they may seem. The fact that the FBI opened a file on rumors about Hitler in Argentina does not mean that Hitler was actually in Argentina. It simply means that the FBI was doing its job by following up on a lead. One of the most frequently cited pieces of alleged evidence is a claim that Hitler arrived in Argentina by submarine approximately 2.5 weeks after the fall of Berlin. The document describing this claim states that pre-arrangements had been made with Argentine officials to provide safe hiding places for Hitler and his party. It describes Hitler as clean-shaven, suffering from asthma and ulcers, living at a remote ranch in the Andes. However, when you examine the source of this claim, it becomes clear that it is merely one person's report of what they allegedly heard from another source. There is no independent corroboration. There is no physical evidence of a submarine journey. There are no Argentine government records confirming such arrangements. There is no evidence that Hitler ever arrived in Argentina. In fact, there is a logical problem with the submarine escape theory. Hitler was the most famous person in the world. His appearance was immediately recognizable. Even if he had managed to escape to Argentina, his eventual discovery would have been virtually inevitable. Yet no credible evidence of his presence in Argentina has ever been found. No photographs, no documents, no genuine sightings from reliable witnesses, no bodies that could be identified as Hitler. Nothing. Moreover, the claim that Peron's government provided Hitler a safe haven and protection is implausible. While Peron was sympathetic to Nazi ideology and did protect many Nazi fugitives, protecting Hitler specifically would have been extraordinarily risky for his government. The capture or discovery of Hitler in Argentina would have caused an international incident of massive proportions. The United States, Britain, and the Soviet Union would have all sought to extradite him or capture him. The political and diplomatic fallout would have been catastrophic. It is difficult to imagine why Peron would have taken such a risk. Furthermore, Argentine declassified documents, which have been released in recent years, contain extensive information about Nazi fugitives in Argentina. The documents detail the arrival of Eichmann, Mengele, and many others. They document their movements, their employment, their financial activities. Yet there is no document that provides any credible evidence of Hitler's presence in Argentina. The 2025 declassification of nearly 2,000 Argentine documents on Nazi fugitives was supposed by some to finally prove that Hitler had escaped to Argentina. However, the documents have not provided any such proof. Instead, they have further confirmed that while thousands of Nazis did flee to Argentina, there is no credible evidence that Hitler himself was among them. So why does the Hitler in Argentina theory persist? Why does it continue to captivate the public imagination? Several factors contribute to its endurance. First, the Soviet suppression of evidence about Hitler's death created a genuine historical vacuum. For decades, the Soviet Union maintained official silence about Hitler's fate, which fueled speculation and conspiracy theories. This silence created doubt where there need not have been any. Second, the well-documented fact that Argentina was a haven for Nazi fugitives lends a veneer of plausibility to claims about Hitler. If other Nazis could hide in Argentina, why not Hitler? This reasoning is superficially appealing but fails to account for the crucial difference. We have extensive documentary evidence of Eichmann's and Mengele's presence in Argentina, but no such evidence of Hitler's. Third, the Hitler escape theory appeals to a certain narrative impulse. The idea that Hitler managed to escape justice, to live out his life in hiding rather than facing execution or imprisonment, is a story with dramatic appeal. It resonates with certain audiences who are predisposed to believe in government cover-ups and conspiracies. Fourth, some elements of the narrative are genuinely true and can be conflated with the false elements. It is true that Nazis escaped to Argentina. It is true that the FBI and CIA investigated claims about Hitler. It is true that declassified documents exist. But the fact that some elements are true does not make the entire narrative true. This is a common pattern with conspiracy theories. They mix genuine facts with speculation and unfounded claims, creating a narrative that sounds plausible on the surface but does not hold up under scrutiny. What then is the most reasonable historical conclusion about Hitler's death? Based on the available evidence, it is clear that Adolf Hitler died in his bunker in Berlin on April 30th, 1945. This conclusion is supported by eyewitness testimony, forensic evidence, DNA analysis, and the absence of any credible evidence to the contrary. The conspiracy theories about Hitler's escape to Argentina are not supported by credible historical evidence. They represent a failure of critical thinking, a willingness to accept speculative claims based on circumstantial evidence and rumor rather than demanding solid proof. This is not to say that the history of Nazis in Argentina is not fascinating and important. The fact that Argentina provided refuge for Nazi war criminals, that thousands of them escaped justice and lived quietly in South American cities, is a significant historical tragedy. That Eichmann and Mengele were able to hide in Argentina for years before being discovered reflects a failure of international justice and cooperation. That Argentina's government facilitated their arrival reflects a tragic sympathy for Nazi ideology in a country that should have been a beacon of democracy. These are important historical facts that deserve study and understanding, but they should not be conflated with unfounded speculation about Hitler. The true lesson of the Hitler in Argentina story is about how history becomes mythologized. It demonstrates how a kernel of truth, that Nazis did flee to Argentina, can become distorted and expanded into a false narrative that Hitler specifically fled there. It shows how declassified documents, while they can illuminate history, can also be misinterpreted to support pre-existing beliefs. For historians, the story offers a cautionary tale about the importance of rigorous source criticism. Just because something appears in a declassified document does not mean it is true. Just because the FBI investigated a claim does not mean the claim has merit. Just because something sounds plausible does not mean we should believe it. The historical record, examined carefully and critically, tells us that Hitler died in his bunker. The DNA evidence confirms it. The eyewitness accounts confirm it. The absence of credible evidence of his presence anywhere else confirms it. In conclusion, while it is true that Argentina became a haven for Nazi fugitives after World War II, and while it is true that intelligence agencies investigated claims about Hitler, the theory that Hitler himself escaped to Argentina does not survive serious historical scrutiny. The evidence for his death in Berlin is compelling. The evidence for his escape to Argentina is non-existent. History is fascinating because it is true. It is dramatic because real events involve real people facing real challenges and making real choices with real consequences. We do not need to invent false narratives or subscribe to unfounded conspiracy theories to find history interesting. The genuine history of Nazis in Argentina is compelling enough. Thank you for joining me on this exploration of one of history's most enduring myths.